Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known in this realm as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please ya, join me here once again for another installment of Hail to Stephen King. That is right, a show that I do twice a week here on the Horror Show, and I must admit, it is a little strange jumping on for the 51st episode of this show after all of the heyday pleasantries, craziness that was the 50th episode of this program, but you must soldier along. And so one thing that I am going to be doing here going forward, as we have every terrifying Tuesday and every scarific Saturday installments of this show, is I want to bring back viewer questions. That is right. And it was something that I kind of almost forged this show and its popularity initially because of the fact that viewers were just kind of wondering, when will my inquiry actually make its way to the show? Well, you know what? Check it out. We are going to start doing a viewer question once a week, and we are going to do a just proper, King Fest that is just of my liking once a week. So, who is it going to be? That is right. Who is it going to be? Well, this is a long-time viewer here on the Horror Show. His name is Sam Forsyth, and this is a rather lengthy question, but I think it's a question that really, it holds a lot of bearing and just a lot of relevance for the sheer fact that people don't always adore something as much as they inevitably become to. And so, Sam's question was, what did you think about Stephen King before you started seriously reading him? And that is the key word here. Seriously reading him. To go on further, my answer: I've always been a big reader and always really turned my nose up at supermarket authors, and King is definitely of the supermarket authors, especially like in the 80s, when I feel like the 80s was his heyday as far as adaptations, as far as if you went into a supermarket, you would see his paperbacks and, all these different things. Like, King was being practically pushed down people's throats, and so there was probably a reluctance and a resistance because of that. Just to go on forward. The kinds of authors who whatever they write get super mega mass marketed. Until I was about 25 to 26 years old, I always thought of Stephen King as a lame supermarket author. I really felt like he was a trash author who I'd never give my time to. I was a huge fan of the TV show Lost, and I was really big into theory message boards, and he crosses out some of what he's saying, Sam. Yes, that's right. He's like, and Stephen King and Dark Tower kept coming up again and again in all of these theories, and he crossed that out, but still felt the need to leave it in the question here. As in, this is a lot like that Stephen King novel, or this has got to be an indirect nod to the Dark Tower. So it's just kind of funny that, you saw it and yet you were holding it at arm's length, man. You were just like, nope, I am not that interested in this. And I love the fact that you left the particular bits of inner turmoil and and just charged forward. So this has got to be an indirect nod at Dark Tower. So that convinced me to read the Dark Tower, albeit very hesitantly. So Sam read the Dark Tower hesitantly because of the fact that he saw this coming up again and again and again and again with good reason. So let's finish out the question. So that convinced me to read the Dark Tower very hesitantly, but then getting sucked in and devouring it all that summer. Then I read The Stand, and that was that. That turned me into a super fan and have read almost every novel, still working on it. Now, Sam asked me this question quite a while back, and it's just been sitting in the reservoir for some time at this point. But, it is a tough one to get through. But, dude, if you got through The Stand and you're still working through it, I hope that you have, made your way to the finish line on that. But if we're going to talk about initial Stephen King impressions, that's right. That is the purpose of this video here, to just kind of give Sam and all of the others who see this massive book stand beside me, what did I initially think about Stephen King? And to answer that properly, Stephen King was kind of a hit or miss for me initially. But the thing to keep in mind is Stephen King was a hit or miss before I actually read him. And Stephen King fell into that category and that criteria for the sheer fact that his adaptations are not always very good. That was my only understanding of El Rey, was the adaptation aspect, you know? So, check it out. I see The Stand, amazing. I see It, before that even, a few years before, amazing. But everything that I saw from there on, I never read anything. I didn't even start reading Stephen King until I was almost in my 30s. So yeah, that really says a lot. But I judge Stephen King specifically based on his adaptations of stories. And so if you're talking It and you're talking The Stand, then obviously you are going to adore what you're seeing, or at least I hope you would, because of the fact that the It adaptation is great. The original 1991 is amazing, and you guys are terrible and evil if you think that that one's crappy. But man, The Stand especially just left such an imprint upon me that it set a very high standard, you know? And so as I got into exploring more of his later works, you know, they adapted the Tommyknockers, there was the Golden Years, there was Storm of the Century, which I really didn't understand, there was the Langoliers, and so you have to remember, I was born in the 80s, early 80s in fact, and so I was most privy to King stuff when, you know, he was probably in the twilight of, I guess, his relevance, maybe, and he found new life in the last decade or so. He really, really did. But honestly, in the mid to late 90s, Stephen King, people were just kind of like, Stephen King, and I felt the same way, because of the fact that even though The Langoliers is pretty damn good, even though the Tommyknockers was so-so and just poorly adapted, stuff like Rose Red, I was not a fan, and even more so, stuff like Kingdom Hospital, which wasn't even a Stephen King story. It was Lars von Trier, or, you know, whatever that guy's name is, the guy who did the super crazy sex movie and Antichrist, if I remember, and slicing off of wieners and all kinds of wackiness. So, honestly, for me, King was very insanely hit and miss in the early days because of the fact that it was just like, okay, you set such a high benchmark and then you go and you have all of these mediocre adaptations. And so the reason I fell off the Stephen King train, despite adoring those first few stories, was for the sheer fact that I was not impressed with his late 90s output and early 2000s output. I could have given two craps, man. Two craps. And how insane is that? I'm struggling to even remember why I decided to pick up Pet Sematary and start this insanity. But, you know, it was a trying time in my life. I was going through a very bad breakup from a fiance at the moment, and I was like, go to what you know. Go to what you know. And I went to wanting to finally read, you know, the stories that scared the living shit out of me, and Pet Sematary being one of those. And just, I didn't even watch the Pet Sematary adaptation that, was done by that female director, married, boy, her name is eluding me, so I'm not going to try to butcher and, you know, put down a name that is not proper, but damn, that scared the crap out of me. But specifically, the Zola bits. And the Zola bits were a credit to that male actor who, you know, was doing the contortionist, like, craziness, you know, with the back dysplasia and whatnot, and all of that. But yeah, it was rewatching that, deciding that I wanted to read Pet Sematary. I read Pet Sematary, and then Pet Sematary, along with The Stand and It being my three favorites, I read all of those. And as I've said many times on this show before, but if you are new to this program and you want to hear a little bit of insight, it was when I was rereading The Stand, which was the third Stephen King book that I read. That was when I realized Randall Flagg is in multiple Stephen King books, and it blew my mind, and it made me set out on this journey, which encompassed all of the stuff that you see beside you, right here, or beside me, I should say, right here. And Dizam, what a journey it was, going from Carrie all the way through, reading everything in its sequential published order, and yeah, but until I started reading Stephen King, I will admit that I was not the biggest Stephen King fan, Sam. I was just not. You know, I thought that he was a guy who had incredible ideas, but, you know, based on the fact that I had seen so many properties poorly put to screen, I was not a big Stephen King fan. In fact, if I'm going to classify it properly, I feel like the guy was hit and miss. Never would I say that now. You know, especially after reading everything and seeing the worth and the merit in everything and the amazingness that he puts together. Yes, every Stephen King book, even Dreamcatcher and Bag of Bones, which are my two least favorite, they still hold merit. They truly do. So, as I round out this very, very short Stephen King video, as far as Hail goes, I want your feedback, guys. I want your opinions about this. I'm about to start rereading Night Shift. And I have a grand idea where I'm kind of thinking, is there any way we could all read one story a night, and then if I jumped on the horror show or my personal Instagram or the Facebook of either of those, would you guys be down with the idea of reading one story a night and then we all talk about it briefly? I'm so about this idea because of the fact that this collection right up here, which is seeing its 40th anniversary this year, it's got so many gems in it. You know, from Jerusalem's Lot and One for the Road, which are the before and the after of Salem's Lot. It's got Gray Matter, which is one of my favorite short stories of Stephen King ever, about spoiled beer and this guy turning into like a nasty slug of sorts. I mean, it's got Graveyard Shift in it about all the rats, which is so much better than the terrible adaptation that we saw at the screen. So there are a ton of amazing, amazing stories in this. Would you guys be down for us reading it together? I'm down for this idea. I think this could be fun. I think all of us could, you know, just enjoy the Hail, I don't know, just the patronage, the camaraderie, all of this stuff. I think that we could have a really amazing time rereading Night Shift together. What are your thoughts on that? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. And what do you think about doing a comment-based video every single week as opposed to me just running forward with stuff? And, you know, I've had lots of comments and lots of suggestions about the same topic, and I've ran with that before, but who wants to have the spotlight like right upon them? Do you guys like this idea? I would hope Sam enjoyed this, and I got to give tons of love to him because of the fact that, yeah, he's a longtime horror show viewer, reader, and supporter. So, gracias, Toyo-san, and gracias to all of the constant readers. I've been Jaime and Fuego. You can find me on all social media sectors, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and a little bit of the YouTubes. And, yeah, guys, until that Wheel of Con comes around once more, hasta luego, sin amigos. I hope it is sooner rather than later, and until we reconnect once more, stay scared and read Stephen King. And how about you read Night Shift with me? I'd love it.